I've discussed the RWBY villains several times now on my channel. I love the villains. They're my favorite characters. And I find the antagonists to usually be much more fascinating to study and explore the mentality and the characteristics of than the heroes. It takes a very interesting person to willingly side with the forces of evil, whether it's because they think they're actually doing the right thing, they think their actions are justified, or they just lack the empathy to care about those they are potentially hurting. The villains are always interesting to understand in terms of the story and the plot. So why do the heroes feel like villains too? I'm sure this is a take you've seen somewhere online. There's a growing idea that Team RWBY's actions feel almost as villainous, if not more so, than the actual villains' actions. So why? We're meant to be rooting for these girls, and yet, especially after the events of volumes 7 and 8, more and more people are labeling their actions as villainous. Well, I've thought about it, and I think it's time to take a closer look at the actions of our quote-unquote heroes. Though, if I'm honest, hero really isn't the right word for them. Main character works, but the titular team have done almost nothing that could be labeled as heroic, and yet they constantly get praised like they do. Team RWBY really do have the habit of rolling into a situation and being less than helpful in the long run, but then once the dust has settled, they get pats on the back and an extra little fancy bonus or whatever. Now, I want to be a bit more in-depth with their actions from the later volumes, because that's where the root of the issue seem to be stemming from. However, I did want to also briefly cover the first 5 volumes when it comes to RWBY. Specifically, 3 things. How helpful is Team RWBY in a situation? Did Team RWBY get praised or rewarded for something? Or, and this one's important, did they get punished in some way? Keep that third one in mind, it'll be really prominent later on. Alright, so blasting through this as fast as I can. Right off the bat, RWBY really didn't help against Cinder or Torchwick. If anything, she just distracted Glinda long enough for the villains to retreat. However, in return, Ozpin instead rewards RWBY for, I don't know, attempting to help, getting pushed 2 whole school years ahead to join Beacon. Then later in Volume 1, Blake and Sun do try to stop Torchwick from the dust robbery, and while we never really know if he actually succeeded in stealing the dust there, we do know that he continued to steal every speck of dust in the kingdom. So while you could count this as a win, it really didn't actually help in the long run. Also, important to note that Team RWBY didn't actually help. Blake was there, sure, but let's be honest, the only part of that fight people really get hyped for was Torchwick versus Sun, and then Penny's weapons on display. Blake's quick pot shots did nothing, and RWBY was taken out before she could even attempt an attack. Now, they weren't exactly rewarded for this encounter, but they weren't punished for it either. Volume 2, RWBY sneaks off to fight Cinder during the dance, and then flat out lies to Ozpin about knowing there's things in Mountain Glen, and Ozpin rewards them and bends the rules so they can go there with Oobleck. Later they board the train, and even though they had the time and opportunity to stop the train from crashing into Vale, they didn't. Yeah, this was a failed mission. The Grimms still burst into the streets and attacked innocent people, even though Team RWBY were there before the train had even started to move. Now, again, they weren't exactly rewarded nor punished here, but they did get the whole, yay, happy, good for you moments during the finale, so clearly they at least view this event as a success or a good thing, even though it was a failed mission. Volume 3 is really the only time their actions seem to have consequences, where Yang breaking Mercury's leg gets the girls kicked out of the tournament. However, it's also the only volume where they don't really participate too much in the finale. The girls face off more with their personal quests, like Torchwick and Adam, but they weren't doing anything the other students and huntsmen weren't also doing. Volume 4 we might as well skip. Looking back, this really is the biggest filler season of the show, huh? There's only 2 things in regards to what I'm talking about here. Weiss gets punished for speaking up at the event, resulting in her dad slapping her. This is seen as a bad thing to villainize Jacques. It's not meant to show us that Weiss did something wrong. It's just meant to show that this is something he is doing wrong. Alternatively, though, Blake slaps Sun around, and no one does anything. Blake constantly attacks and screams at Sun throughout this whole volume, and no one ever confronts her on this behavior. No one even justifies it in-universe by saying, oh, she's just going through a lot. They just let her get away with doing the exact same thing Jacques was doing that's considered bad. This hypocrisy will become much more prevalent down the line. Finally, in Volume 5, it's the same as Volume 2. The team was at Haven long before the attack and did absolutely nothing to help. Yeah, Crow tried looking for huntsmen, but by all means, the only thing the heroes did was sit around and wait for the school to be attacked. They didn't try to reinforce the security on their own, or do their own investigating. They were there, the school got attacked, and they let all of the villains escape, including Raven, Adam, Hazel, Emerald, and Mercury, and they let Leo get killed. Again, this was a failure. Even getting the relic was a failure. Their mission was never to take the relics with them. They wanted to make sure it stayed safe in the vault, but since they let the Spring Maiden run away, the kids were forced to take it with them, which ultimately becomes a bigger problem for them down the line. Mission failed. And that's really the history of Team RWBY's accomplishments when it comes to their direct actions in regards to the villains. They lose, they get rewarded. Hell, Yang lost an arm and she got rewarded with a brand new one. Why? Did Ironwood regret kicking them out of the tournament? The only thing that they did that actually got them punished? Did he feel bad that she lost a limb? Did he give any of the other kids who potentially got dismembered robotic limbs? I don't know, but yay, another reward for Yang. Thanks for showing up, I suppose. You broke a kid's leg, resulting in the beginnings of the Grimm invasion, and then didn't stop the bad guy. Here's your prize! And so going into Volume 6, this is where the beginnings of the issues with Team RWBY really start to arise, because by this point it's becoming much harder to ignore. Team RWBY are not helpful in these situations, but they keep getting praised like they are. And they are never punished for doing anything wrong, even when it's something the kids also perceive as being a wrong thing. So let's go into this with a bit more detail. Volume 6 starts and the train's under attack. Oh hell, and right away Team RWBY and Crow start getting pissy because Dudley is using the turrets to kill the Grimm.
You can get that idiot to shut off the turrets. They're just drawing the Grimm toward the passengers.
Listen, Crow, how drunk are you? The passengers have been reinforced with various shields by now, and the turrets are doing literally the same fucking thing your bullets are doing. In fact, if anything, the turrets are doing a better job. The turrets are killing the Grimm in one hit. Meanwhile, the girls need to hit the Grimm multiple times just to kill them. Also, the turrets are killing the Grimm before they even get to the train cars, while Team RWBY are insisting on killing them once they're already standing on top of them. Crow only says this because the turrets weren't strong enough to kill the Sphinx in one hit. So as it moved down the line, it was calling more Grimm to her. Her? Do Grimm have genders? I've just always seen the Sphinx as a girl. I never considered this before. But that changes nothing, because it's also not like the heroes could have killed it in one hit. Crow himself was dicking around with it for a while, and all 5 of them had to team up in order to kill it. I'm pretty sure a couple of turret rounds could have helped speed up that process. No, instead, the heroes decide to start verbally and physically attacking the dude who just watched his partner get murdered in front of him.
Life is beautiful.
Yeah, except for when they're kind of sketchy though, I guess. And after being injured and literally boxed in by these kids demanding he turns the turrets off, Dudley basically has no choice but to listen to them. Crow is causing a huge scene, and it's obviously only upsetting the passengers more. You know, likely attracting more Grimm. But surprise, surprise, it's also actually the Relic's fault. So Team RWBY just yelled at this guy because he was attracting the Grimm towards the passengers, but once they find out it was actually their fault, they clam up about it. And yet, still rewarded because they get exactly what they wanted. They wanted the damn turrets turned off, and that's what happens. You do something wrong, I do the same thing that's wrong. You get yelled at for it, I get what I want. After the crash, the kids still don't give a shit about this. The kids are more upset that Ozpin hadn't have told them about the Grimm attracting feature of the relics beforehand, rather than the fact that it was likely their relic that was causing the Grimm attack to begin with. Our heroes, ladies and gentlemen. After this, Oz spills all his beans, revealing the clearly very traumatic and painful backstory to them that mostly didn't need to be told. Seriously, the only important part was the fact Salem can't be killed. Jin just told the girls his entire backstory unnecessarily, and then the girls take this opportunity to do the exact same thing they did to Dudley. Scream into his face and get physically violent. These are not actions a hero takes, are they? Are you starting to see how the girls could be seen as villainous yet? Well, just you wait, because this is nothing compared to the rest of it. Fast forward a bit, and the kids get stopped by Cordovan. Now, admittedly, Cordo doesn't give a very good reason as to why the girls can't leave, but also the girls do basically nothing to convince her to think otherwise. Because really, Cordo is right. 2 of the schools have been attacked now, and both headmasters have been killed as a result. Ironwood had already put up precautions after Beacon fell. Hearing about another school attack obviously must have made him heighten that security. It makes sense that Cordo wouldn't be willing to let anybody willy-nilly into the kingdom. But the heroes don't bother telling her anything different. Crow doesn't show her his huntsman license. They don't bother trying to write a letter to Ironwood or Winter. No, instead, they looked at this woman just doing her job and trying to protect Mantle and Atlas, and then decide she's a villain. Any action is necessary now, so obviously we need to jump to a federal crime. The kids just jump straight to steal an airship and justify it to themselves by, I don't know, agreeing that Crow sucks? Seriously, the only option they give is steal an airship, and Crow is the only one to oppose this very obviously stupid and dangerous plan. But since he's been drinking a lot lately, the kids use this to villainize him in this moment, and force him to listen to them, and of course to get exactly what they want. If they don't get what they want, they just villainize the character out of nowhere. Also, might I add, there was a way easier way of doing things, because Cordo said Weiss could go.
And wishes to return to her family, then of course, the Atlas military will escort her home.
So yeah, there we go. Easy peasy. Have Weiss take the relic to Atlas, give it to Ironwood, let him give the rest of them clearance, and they'll catch up in a couple of days. But for some reason, they don't want to do this. They insist on sticking together and doing this stupidly convoluted and mega illegal thing because traveling on your own is boring. Hell, if Weiss was insistent, she might have been able to get at least Crow or Maria to join her. Either one could have worked as a chaperone due to their age, but also since Crow is a licensed huntsman, he could have gotten some clearance probably. And Maria had a medical emergency. I know Cordo had a weird beef with her, but a petty grudge over dumbass cashews shouldn't get in the way of a medical procedure. But now, instead, Team RWBY decide to steal an airship. Because when there's already heightened security and a series of terrorist attacks on a kingdom, stealing an airship and illegally entering the city is such a good idea. Not only that, but the heroes do so much damage because of this. These 2 guards, stranded out in the middle of the ocean, yeah, they had a parachute, but even if both of them got down to safety, what do? Did Weiss give them a raft as well? If not, how long would they have to tread water before someone could boat over and rescue them?
This precious.
Except when they're kind of annoying, right? Because they stole a fucking military-grade airship, of course Cordo would be compelled to use her biggest force to try to stop them. She doesn't know what sort of threat they possess, and because of that, it's likely increased the panic in the civilians. Oh boy, the military is launching their super big mech, and it's attacking one of their own ships? Fuck, that must be really bad. Mix that with the fact that they still have the relic, and it still attracts the Grimm. Of course the Leviathan showed up. On top of all of that, Team RWBY's plan was to cripple Cordo's mech. The one thing they have to fight off a Grimm that size. Something they knew about. Jean sat there and literally spelled it out to them.
It's probably meant for giant Grimm that come in from deeper waters.
Literally everything was Team RWBY's fault. The panic from the crowds, the Grimm invasion, any of the casualties and property damage that the Grimm caused, and whatever repairs needed to be made for Cordo's mech, all of it. It all only happened because Team RWBY really wanted to travel together. You can have RWBY stand there and monologue with doe eyes all you want, she's still in the wrong.
We didn't want to steal from you. We did it because you gave us no other choice.
No, you refused to consider any of the other choices you had. You all were the dumbasses that jumped straight to stealing a military airship because you didn't like the choices you were given. And worst of all, they get fucking rewarded for this. Cordo lets them go and doesn't tattle on them. All that destruction and chaos and injury that they caused, and they get rewarded with exactly what they wanted. This is like if a kid said, said they want ice cream for dinner, and their parents told them no and gave them pasta instead. And then the kid throws their plate on the ground, ruining his meal and shattering the plate. And when the parent scolds them and tells them that they'll be punished for it, the kid says back, "No, it's your fault, because you didn't give me what I wanted. If I just got what I wanted right away, then none of this would have happened." And then the parent just gives them the ice cream anyways. You would look at this situation and say that that is a bad parent and that that kid is a spoiled, rotten little brat. And that's Team RWBY. They are spoiled to the core. They think they should get whatever they want, no questions asked. Anyone who tells them no is the bad guy. Doesn't matter how close they are. Team RWBY can do no wrong, and it's not fair to ask them to compromise or settle for something different. And after all that screaming, crying, tantrum throwing they do, they're still being handed their ice cream. The kids have been fucking trained to think that they're always right all the time, and should get exactly what they want. And they're allowed to do whatever they want to get that result and should be praised for it, no matter what problems arose from their decisions. They just still want to get their way. Enter Volume 7, and the kids get arrested by the Aesops. Oh, but they were protecting the civilians. They were helping people. The Aesops shouldn't have stopped them. That was bad. Except no, because you know who also helped kill the Grimm and protect people? The villains. Remember Volume 2? On top of that, they showed up in a stolen airship and refused to interact with the comms, who flat out told them they were going to be under arrest if they didn't comply.
We've noticed a detour in your route. You are to make your way to Docking Bay Omega 12 immediately. Do you copy?
They didn't radio in and say, "Hey, it's me, Crow. Ironwood knows me. We need to see him. Is there somewhere we can land?" Or, "Yo, hey, it's me, Weiss. My family is looking for me, but I need to see the general first." No, they just ignore the people whose entire job is making sure the kingdom stays safe, and then brings a stolen airship into their city. Of course they got arrested. Sit there and pout and be pissy all you want, but being arrested was your only fucking option. Because you know who else flew a stolen airship into the kingdom? Yeah, the villains. If Cinder and Neo had been the ones to land and start killing Grimm, you bet your ass they should have been arrested. No one would have been whining about it then. This is just another example of the heroes doing the exact same thing as the villains, but expecting to get away with it. Oh, but because the illustrious Team RWBY didn't get exactly what they wanted right away, that means suddenly, just like with Crow, just like with Ozpin, and just like with Cordo, Ironwood needs to be villainized now too. Enter the hypocrisy. Now, Twins covered this topic plenty in her amazing Ironwood video. Links in the description. You should really watch it, it's really good. But to summarize, Team RWBY are the biggest hypocrites in the world. After screaming and crying and shitting themselves nonstop over Ozpin keeping secrets, Team RWBY immediately turn around and keep those same secrets from Ironwood.
The questions were used before I sealed it away.
But all the questions were used up already.
What happened to no more lies and half-truths?
That's not normal. How did he—
We don't know. We were in a train crash. Well, suddenly Oz wasn't there anymore.
Now I'm willing to believe that the heroes had some reason to be suspicious of Ironwood, despite all of the things he's done for them in the past. Sure, whatever. In fact, I was excited to see how this plot point of Team RWBY mimicking Ozpin's shortcomings would play out. After pitching such a fit about Ozpin's lies, they're now turning around and choosing to do the exact same thing in return? This could potentially be a huge character growth moment for them. Except, oops, haha, never mind. The girls really only questioned the fact they lied once, very early on, and then never talk about it again. Instead, they just happily reap the benefits of abusing Ironwood's trust in them. They get fancy new weapon upgrades and gear. They get turned into huntsmen, and they get to train with the most elite team in Atlas. They get invited to big fancy events, and Team RWBY all the while sit back and smile and bask in all the goodies and gifts they receive, never once questioning their deceit. Until suddenly, Mom doesn't want to let them have ice cream for dinner again.
The staff and the lamp have to be locked away.
I thought you said we could keep it.
Once the cat's out of the bag and Ironwood realizes the girls have been lying to him the entire time, he acts, honestly, the same way they did. Get upset, and attack. But now, for some reason, this is a bad thing? Instead, this just confirms their suspicions or something, I guess. The suspicions they never even let us know what they're thinking. The girls never even really explained why they didn't trust Ironwood suddenly between volumes. They just decided to lie to him out of the blue, and at least Ozpin had a reason as to why he was hiding the truth.
I feared that making you all aware would only add anxiety and negativity. It seems like the safer option.
An incredibly justified reason at that, because after finding out the truth about the relics in his past, the people who claimed to be his closest allies turned on him.
Please, now is not the time.
No, we're past that. I want to know why you're still not telling us everything. Look, we're supposed to be in this together. You can trust us. We're not going to turn our backs on
2 seconds later.
that bastard! Tell him we're not done yet!
How much longer can we even trust him?
Ozpin's concerns all came true. Telling the girls the truth only did him harm, and in turn, the girls took that truth and used the same exact tactics against his most trusted allies. So yeah, can you start to see where this sounds a bit like a villain's actions? The girls' hypocrisy is through the roof now. They attack Oz for lying, yet do the same exact thing. When he hides away, they get upset, but then run away and hides from Ironwood after he finds out the truth. Hell, Yang and Blake went behind everyone's backs to tattle to Robin, the criminal who's been Ironwood's most persistent adversary, taking vital resources from his Amity project illegally. The woman literally Yang and Blake have never met. They arbitrarily decide during one truck ride that they want to trust her? Why? There is no justification here. In fact, this scene starts out with Yang saying that they should talk to Ironwood.
Do you think we should have told Ironwood about Salem before he put so much on the line for Amity?
But somewhere in the middle of their talk, Blake makes it about Adam unnecessarily, then says she doesn't want to ambush someone who's just trying to help. Except that's not what they're doing. They're attempting to arrest a criminal who is actively stealing Ironwood's materials to finish the Amity project. Where did trusting Robin come in from? Then later, Yang makes a big stink about Ironwood lying about Amity being finished.
You said in your speech that Amity Tower was ready to launch. Was that true?
You just said that. To lure out Watts.
Yeah. To trap Watts and arrest him. A successful mission, might I add. And apparently, Amity being finished really wasn't that far from being a reality, since Team RWBY flipped the on switch in a couple of minutes at the start of Volume 8. So Yang actively helped the person who stopped Amity from being finished, then got upset when Amity wasn't finished, and was upset that Ironwood lied about it even though she had lied to him about the relics in Salem. So who's the villain here? Who's the lying, manipulative, selfish one here? Because it sure isn't the man who told you everything. The kids' biggest issue with Oz, the thing that makes them insist he's morally gray, was the fact he was lying to them. But Ironwood laid everything out for them immediately. Even if they couldn't trust him right away, he gave them no reason to keep this mindset. He instantly told them about Amity and who he had told about the relics in Salem. He told them his plans and he told them everything. But the moment he actually hit onto a tiny piece of information in order to trick one of the villains, suddenly it's all out the window. Team RWBY's lies were justified now, right? Nothing morally gray about their actions, right? So, Ironwood gets labeled as a villain for Volume 8, because this time, the parents decided to send the kid to bed without dinner, rather than giving them that damn ice cream. That makes him a villain. Now, Ironwood's writing goes to shit for Volume 8, but even if this wasn't out of left field, can you blame him? Literally everything he's done to protect the people has been turned to shit because of these 4 fuck-ups. They lied to him, took advantage of his power, and then tried to tell him he was the one in the wrong. Even though the issues facing Atlas and Mantle is not black and white, Team RWBY acts like it is. They act like Ironwood's goal of guarantee saving as many as I can, but leaving the others to probably die, is the de facto wrong choice, while Team RWBY's plan of maybe maybe save everyone but also put everyone in danger is honestly no better, but they act like it is. And I can understand giving your characters conviction in their actions, but they never once try to think of a compromise. This is just the issue with Cordo all over again. Endanger everyone because you want it done a specific way. No other options. No compromise, nothing. My way or the highway. And just like lying to Ironwood, they never even bother trying to explain why they feel so strongly this way. The audience can't even be let in on their justifications. We're just meant to automatically agree with them, even though it's a situation that by nature has no clear right or wrong option. The hypocrisy becomes laughable at this point too, and it makes it easy to look back at Team RWBY and see just how bad they've always been when it comes to it. Jacques is bad for hitting Weiss. Blake is totally allowed to hit Sun. Hazel is bad for beating Oscar. But it was understandable when Crow did it.
They're just following orders now. Still just following orders.
Meanwhile, Yang has been following every single order Ozpin has given the team. It's bad when Ozpin lies, but it's fine when Team RWBY lies. It's bad when Ironwood gets upset because his trusted allies lied to him, but it's okay when Team RWBY got upset when their trusted ally lied to them. Hell, even small things.
4 versus 1? Cowards.
Flash forward to Team RWBY fighting Cinder 4v1. How very brave of you, Weiss. And the real kick in the pants is that they were right. Cordo and Ironwood, they were right. They were right when they turned Team RWBY away, when they had them arrested. They were right, because Atlas fucking fell. And it was entirely Team RWBY's fault. Cinder may have collapsed Beacon, and Adam attacked Haven, but Team RWBY destroyed Atlas. They crushed Mantle under its weight and flooded the entire kingdom. Vale still stands and is under reconstruction. Haven and all of Mistral walked away with almost 0 casualties. Atlas has been wiped off the map, and it was entirely because of Team RWBY's decisions and actions. Team RWBY insisted on bringing the relic to Ironwood. They insisted on keeping it stapled to their hip the entire time. They didn't bother putting it away anywhere else, not the vault or anything. Team RWBY assisted the person who was getting in the way of Ironwood's Amity project, so it never got fully finished, and the worldwide communication is out of the picture again. They didn't stop Tyrion or Watts from carrying out their evil plans. Ironwood did that. Team RWBY insisted on lying to the general, which ultimately broke him, which led to his bomb threat. If they hadn't have shown up, I'm sure he wouldn't have resorted to shooting innocent lives. It was that break that pushed him over the edge. And it was Team RWBY who decided to take the staff, let Atlas fall willingly over a selfish need to make Penny a real girl. Penny, who was willing to sacrifice herself multiple times throughout the volume, but Team RWBY really wanted it that way. It was bad when Ironwood wanted to use the staff for something different, but it's fine when they want to use the staff for something they want. Team RWBY's actions only led to Atlas's downfall, and they did absolutely nothing to try to stop it. The heroes spent most of their time in jail, stranded out in the tundra, or sitting on their asses sipping tea, talking about how bad it looks out there. The only people they teamed up with were the Happy Huntresses, and they immediately turned their backs on them to chase down Oscar.
Figured you wouldn't let us down!
They've let everyone down. And yeah, they made their big dumb doorway to Vacuo, but the civilians were only met with shredding sandstorms and monsters eating them off the spot. And it was all Yang's fault.
Can you make a bunch of doorways in Atlas that open at a single spot in Vacuo?
Even if the heroes ever bothered to justify this decision to bring them to Vacuo, which they never did, why did they pick random spot in the desert? Why didn't Yang say Shade Academy? Team RWBY's own decisions and negligence has led to massive amounts of people being dumped into the middle of a barren wasteland surrounded by monsters with no means of defending themselves. And also now dumps an immeasurable amount of civilians onto the people of Shade Academy. Once the people of Atlas finally do make it to civilization, I highly doubt there's gonna be enough food or water to pass around. Team RWBY did this. This was their version of a successful mission, one that they themselves didn't even get to complete. Team RWBY have just left Juniper behind to be held accountable for these decisions. And that's the thing. I really wanted to get this video out before Volume 9 started, because I really am curious if Team RWBY are ever going to have to face the consequences of their actions. Team RWBY have been coasting by on never getting any sort of punishment for their decisions, and the only few times they have, they've just villainized the people who punished them, claimed they were evil, then ran away and ignored them as they were left for dead.
And it must be protected.
Yeah, unless it's someone who didn't give me exactly what I wanted. Constant, endless praise and prizes have been heaped onto Team RWBY, despite the fact that they never do anything to actually help. Their presence has only been a constant downfall to those around them. By carrying the lamp around, they only attract the Grimm and Salem's forces everywhere they went. From the very beginning, Team RWBY have been doing jack shit to actually do anything heroic, to actually help anybody, and yet they still have been getting rewarded and rewarded and rewarded for this. And if it's not that, then Team RWBY are just being the biggest hypocrites I've ever seen in a written character. Constantly going against the very things they claim, expecting to be praised for the exact things they condemn others for. And all of this, you'd think, would be building up to something. A great big character moment for the title team, a proverbial dropping of the mic on their character arcs. They realized they were in the wrong. They were flawed, that those around them who doubted them were all right to some degree, and that their actions have caused harm, and that their actions hurt others, destroyed cities, and that they did the wrong thing. But no, Team RWBY still, as of the end of Volume 8, waltz around acting as if they're the heroes. They still get treated like they saved the day. They did nothing wrong and they still deserve ice cream for dinner. I would really love to see Team RWBY face the consequences of their actions, or at the very least, reflect on what they've done, where they went wrong, realize their mistakes, but honestly, at this point, I'm doubtful that will ever happen, because as we've seen, this has literally been happening since the very beginning. 9 years in is a little bit late to have our heroes actually start being heroic. So here we are, with a heroic team who constantly seems to be doing villainous things. Well, maybe villainous is the wrong word to use. After all, like I said in the beginning, the villains are my favorites, because they are complex and intriguing, and Team RWBY aren't. I don't like these characters. They're not complex, and they aren't intriguing or anything. Instead, we as the audience are just meant to agree with them because they're the title team. Their team acronym is the name of the show. So that means whatever they do is the right thing, right? Heaven forbid our main characters do something wrong, make a bad choice. No, instead we're just supposed to be applauding them too, clapping them on the backs for their efforts, ignoring the fact that they've been doing the same bad things they get mad at others for, rewarding them for their dangerous actions. The show really wants me to think ice cream for dinner is a good idea. Well, it's not. And I tell you what, Team RWBY might not be villains, but they are a bunch of tantrum-throwing, spoiled, rotten brats. No wonder I like the villains better. Shout out to my $10 patrons, you're all amazing. Nako, James Dodds, Cool Duck, Andrew, Ramiel, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, G-Extreme, Classy Critic, Surge, Mordred Pendragon, Boulder Off Bros, Sunny Shy, Great Bar, Caleb Grimm, Pentamenta, Genital War Thunder, Carmen, Jake, Storm, Amber, Lawlith, Livid Aries, Matt Frost, Just a Chap in a Top Hat, Hype Man, Luno the Evoker, and Zero to Hero. So yeah, I hope you liked this video. Hope you liked me addressing the villains of RWBY again and Team RWBY's actions. I've been thinking about this one for a long time. Let me know what you think. I know not everyone agrees with these ideas that Team RWBY's actions have been villainous, so I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.